welcome to the Healing Train. I am your host, B.Von Squires, and today we are sponsored by Vibity Business Solutions, where AI technology and business come together for a Vibity experience. But today we're here because it is the Healing Train, where ordinary people come to talk about their extraordinary stories, the ups and downs, the twists and turns along the way of their trauma healing journey. And so today we are definitely grateful for another wonderful passenger. Mr. Gordon Skinner is who we have today. And Mr. Skinner, can you please come on and say hello to the community?
Hello, community. Thank you all for having me and welcome.
Thank you so much. We're so honored to have you here. And of course, Mr. Skinner is going to tell you all about who he is and introduce himself on a more personal level when we get back. But before we do all of that, I want to let you know how this is going to work. If you are new, I want to say welcome, 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 because you are welcome here. This is a safe place. And we ask you to keep an open mind so that you can identify with the message of the passenger. All right. And so I wrote a book, if you guys don't know. It's called The Energy Harvest, a spiritual model for the enhancement of your life. And so, what we're going to do today is we're going to walk through the 4 phases of the workbook, which are identify, set, achieve, and sustain. And Mr. Skinner is going to come here and he's going to talk about how he identified the trauma in his life. He's going to even tell us a little bit more into the paradigm and the thought processes that helped him to heal or begin his healing journey from the trauma. And then we'll talk more about all of the wonderful successes that he's been able to accomplish over the years. And then he's going to share with us his magic secret for sustaining all of the wonderful momentum and all of the positive energy that he has for himself and those that he encounters. All right, with no further ado, we're going to jump right on in then. Now, Mr. Skinner, thank you so much. Can I call you Gordon? Is it okay if I call you Gordon?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. We're going to call him Gordon, guys. All right. So, Gordon, thank you so much for being here. One of our wonderful passengers, Lisa Baxter, actually referred you to us, and she said you had a wonderful story. And so today we're going to embark on that journey with you, where you walk us through what it was like for you. Now, I know trauma is a big word for a lot of people, and it can mean a lot of different things. For the most part, a lot of people don't even realize they've had trauma because it has been so normalized within our society, within the home. As for me, psychologically abused, emotionally neglected, those were the traumas that I dealt with. But I thought every little girl was dealing with this in their household. And it wasn't until I grew up and became an adult that I was able to see that no, I've seen fathers cherish and honor and adore their daughters, and that's not what I got. And so I was able to go back then and take a look at the trauma and then heal from it through this process. So tell us, for you, what was it like and what type of trauma will you be talking about today? You just share yourself with us.
Well, I mean, as you have already indicated, trauma is a very big word. It's wrought with a lot of fear and trepidation, and oftentimes that can be self-reflective. Uh, I'll give a brief background as to how I've come to appreciate all of the nuances that come with the word trauma. I had finished had a graduate degree that I wasn't using. So the mind, the mind said, well, what's the best thing to do but get another one, right? So I was at an impasse as to what that would look like. And one of the options was to actually, and I wound up working in a MICA unit, which is mentally ill, chemically addicted, at Mount Sinai Hospital, where I was doing psychodrama and drama therapy, working with the child, so that's individuals up to 10 years old, adolescents, which would go up to 18, and adults, their intake population, and had some pretty significant experiences. I had a 4-year-old who consciously attempted suicide. I had a 16-year-old girl who had been raped 3 times, and the last time had she was multiply raped. That included the participation or at the behest of her boyfriend to have his friends and his friends participate. And then, of course, the adults who had a lot of different issues that brought them there. In a psychiatric setting, it's when in doubt, medicate. And so they
Mm,
fully appreciate the role that arts therapies can play in not only in that environment, but also as the patient, leaves that environment and then returns to the world, how they're then able to cope.
mhm,
Uh, Subsequently, I then uh, realized that this was a gargantuan task to take on the psychiatric administrations. That I wasn't going to be able to address all of them, even at Mount Sinai, in a way that I thought that was effective and beneficial. Not to mention, my own, time and of course there are a lot of different things that came being in that environment. I was able to take away some things that really helped with the next venture, and I wound up working doing international dispute mediation, crisis intervention, and conflict resolution in a number of different theaters of conflict around the world, the Middle East, the Balkans, Chile, uh, and these became very instrumental and beneficial as I then moved into the next phase of my life, which I've been fortunate. I've been doing it now for the past 21 years, where I've been working, doing primarily investigative documentaries, but as a documentary filmmaker. And quickly, uh, they really came to the forefront when my third film was on child soldiers. And I had to travel into a lot of these regions that I
mhm,
had been to doing mediation, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Colombia, Sri Lanka, and Kashmir. And I was able to deal and to cope effectively because of the training and the experiences that I had prior to making documentaries. But ultimately, again, here are environments where it is wrought with trauma. Um, and the last thing I'll say on that is that here in the U.S., aside from the post-traumatic stress that so many people are under and unaware of and unrecognizable, something that we really need to be cognizant of and find ways to address, to apply a healing, is the generational trauma, specifically in the African American communities and certainly communities of color that have been beset upon by non African American or non Indigenous individuals who took it upon themselves to really inflict a lot of harm that continues to be so prevalent through this day.
mhm. Oh my goodness, you said so much, and um, I can only imagine what you yourself have experienced on a personal level, witnessing the destruction of a child's innocence, witnessing these heinous things that are happening to individuals. Can you tell us, you know, how you felt, as a journalistic um, producer, I guess, of your documentaries? I'm not really sure exactly how else to say it, but as that person, I'm sure you had to look at things from an objective standpoint and not really have too much of an emotional attachment, so that you could relay it to your viewers in a way that was politically correct, a way that everyone could understand. But what did that do to and for you as a individual, as Gordon?
Right. Yeah. I mean, as I said, I was very fortunate in having had those prior experiences. The my father was a journalist. He was actually the first African American reporter for the New York Times, for the New York Post, and created his own television show that made him the first African American network television producer in this country. And so he looked at life in a very, in a very arguably matter of fact, and cynical view oftentimes. But what when I shared with him that I had this 4-year-old who attempted suicide, his advice was that I should get a Teflon suit, uh, in essence, and also to create professional distance. And then when I explained that I was working with this 16-year-old girl, and I wasn't the only person, I was actually myself and another paraprofessional and maybe another drama therapist. But when I, shared that again, he echoed the same thing. And while my conflict there was that yes, I understood the importance of creating professional distance, but at the same time, I also recognized that I needed to be present, um, to help, to help this person find a way back to their own wholeness for whatever that meant. And while I was doing that work, I was also very much aware of what I needed to do to be able to go in the next day and do the work. What that then became was I wound up coming up with something that I call giving myself an emotional shower, which uh, played itself out when I was working for an organization called Seeds of Peace, and I was in Greece. I was in Olympia, Greece, for 6 months, and going in and out of the Balkans and in and out of the Middle East. Um, excuse me. I became quickly aware that I was not dealing with, how these interactions with these individuals who had been so traumatized was affecting me. And once I was clear as to, okay, what is going on? How am I, what am I doing? Then I said, okay, so typically I might go and see a movie that would be such an assault on one's intellect that you would not admit having seen it, right? It's like, no, I would never see this actor in this movie, even though I went to see it. And the reason that I did was because in the laughter, you know, there was a release. And the importance of the release is not only for myself, but enables me to then go in the next day and do the work.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, if I'm not dealing with myself, then it is not possible for me to help someone else deal with their own issues and traumas. And I share that to say that it's also not incumbent upon anyone to necessarily have a degree in psychology or psychotherapy, for someone to have a degree in mediation or conflict resolution. All that it requires is for someone to be able to tap into their own humanity
Yes.
and recognize that, in a parlance that we can all appreciate, there but for the grace of God. We're only, I mean, there's a phrase that we're 6 degrees of separation from Brad Pitt, right? Saying that at any point there's, 6 people that one of them is connected close tangentially to Brad Pitt. I don't necessarily agree with it being 6. I think it's 2 degrees, but ultimately the point is that, we have the ability to affect change
Yes.
by being the change.
Mm.
And so then the question becomes, one, how seriously do we take it? Do we own it? And do we do it in the shadows, in the recesses of our home, when no one is looking, when the spotlight is not on, when we're not doing it so that someone then goes, oh, that was a great job. That's not it. It's the time where you actually help someone and then you keep moving. And then the person goes, hey, but that person over there, they helped, and they're gone. Because ultimately, in my humble opinion, it's about paying back. And what I mean by that is, all of the individuals that we've encountered, parents, loved ones, friends, there have been people that have assisted, that have supported, that have enabled us to be where we are. So there's paying back and then paying forward, because we owe a debt to the children, to the next generation, for the, arguably the mess that they are inheriting. Okay. And so there's that duality of paying back by being respectful and appreciative and paying homage, and also being cognizant of the successive generations that hopefully will come, and paying forward or creating something that they too can grab onto.
Wow, thank you so much. What I heard there was your connection to your humanity and knowing yourself well enough to know when to help yourself so that you can continue to do the work. Not that it doesn't bother you, not that it doesn't take a toll on you, but you now are so aware of your personal connection to the trauma, right? That you're not re traumatized by it. And even if you are moved, you know exactly what to do now for Gordon. And so that you can still show up authentically, so that you can still show up and be present and do the work, make a difference in someone else's life. That's what it's all about. That's why I'm so grateful for this platform, because what you're doing is you're showing us that it is possible to go into the thick of it, to go into the trenches, right? And see all of this stuff that's going on, but make sure you go in there prepared and armored up. I heard detachment, I heard avoidance, you know, um, although it may look that way, that's not necessarily what it is, you know. And I'm just real careful about that, because I know that whenever we're acting out in our trauma responses, sometimes they do cause us to detach. And that's why I'm so happy that we are here to bring people back and ground them, right? Bring people back and ground them to a point that says, hey, I don't have to detach. I don't have to avoid. I just need to heal, whatever that looks like. I just need to be returned to my wholeness, as you said. And that's a beautiful place to be. I have been returned to mine, and it is a wonderful feeling to be able to pay forward and to pay back. That was awesome, guys. Didn't you guys hear that? Didn't you love that? Okay. So we're talking to Gordon Skinner today, and he's talking to us about identifying trauma. And he's just shared so much with us about all of his travels and the things that he has seen so far. Now we're going to move into the set phase of the 4 phase trauma healing process. And this phase, we talk about forgiveness, we talk about a paradigm shift, a new way of looking at things, a new perspective that is important and necessary for moving forward. For me, I had to let go of my limiting beliefs about who I am and what I could accomplish. I was told through the psychological abuse that I would be no one, that I would never amount to anything. And so I had to undo that process of thinking so that I could move forward. And it began with forgiveness. And from that forgiveness, I was able to forgive myself as well, for buying into it, for not being perfect even. I had to forgive. And the hardest part was being able to forgive the person who harmed me, because the harm was so deep. But by the grace of God, I was able to get there because I knew it was necessary in order to move forward. Now, for you, can you explain to us what thought process or paradigm has been necessary for you in order to move through, your process, to not be re-traumatized, to keep yourself that professional distance? Those are all thought processes, but is there another thought process, that umbrellas all of those for you, that you can share with us?
Certainly, I would say that there are two. The first is being clear that we're all walking wounded with scars seen and unseen.
Oh,
So, I think that it's important, that we, it's not minimizing, the types of triggers and pains and traumas that we have, but it's also putting it into context that I'm not the only one. I don't exist in a silo. Um, and so that, has been extremely, beneficial and helpful to me. The other, is also recognizing that, again, no one can do anything to me that I do not allow them to do. Now, understand when I say this, if someone, I mean, by a loose example, I went into a school uh, in East New York in Brooklyn and was asked by the superintendent to do a series of lectures with, these various schools on leadership, teen empowerment, young girl empowerment, those types of things.
Mm.
And I had a young kid, tell me, I'm going to punch you in your face. And I said to him, yeah, you probably will if I let you. Now, that doesn't mean that he wouldn't get the shot off. It just means that I'm not going to stand there and play victim. And so, for me, again, taking in, when I am, seeing these triggers, I am hopefully I'm aware of when they show up and how they arrive and why they arrive. For the last few years, and I mean, I went to therapy when I was a child, when I was up until like 11 or 12 years old. But then in 2021, I'd had a bike accident and a lot of different things were going on health wise, and not to mention we're in the midst of COVID and all that carried with it. So I wound up going to a therapist. Fortunately, she is, my therapist is beyond conventional. Our sessions are not anything like one would imagine therapy being. I mean, we have, amazing conversations that range from the political to the social to the personal. She's not passive of how do you feel about that? How did it make you feel? That would never work with me. And she shares her own personal experiences, stories. And so it's, I'm very fortunate in that regard. And I do abdicate that, therapy being a choice. We have to be very careful because right now there are a lot of different online therapy or online therapy that's available, but we have to be careful because a number of those online platforms actually sell your data. So your private information that you are sharing with a therapist, and she is writing notes so that she can then or he can then, work with you moving forward. That information, has been sold not by the therapist but by the platform, and so your name may not be on it, but all of your information is out there to be culled. And but again, I think that therapy is a choice. The other is if you choose not, but you want to then figure out a way, what does wholeness look like for me? Then again, it's important not to compare yourself to someone else.
So good.
So when we're able to move past that, there's a book, and of course, right now I'm forgetting the name of the author, but the book is called Passages, and it really looks at time intervals for how we evolve and grow, and that in our 20s, it was friends and relationships and interactions. 30s, it became about pursuing one's goals and objectives. 40s, an individual was then able to slowly release their having to live up to their parents' standards for what their lives should be. About 50s, it became less importance of the collective of friends, but then focusing on one or a close set of friends and your family, the whatever, if you've created one, or if you're married, those types of relationships become important in the 50s. And so they break down where, a person could be at any one of these, 10-year periods in their life. And I think that, I like our parents, their truths are not our truths. Doesn't mean that it's invalid, doesn't mean that they're not right or accurate. It's just that their truth, your my father's truth is his truth. Uh,
Right.
and when he shares something with me, I put it in the context of, okay, what he shared with me, how beneficial is it, and how much is it the world through his eyes, not living in the world that I'm living in, you
Mm,
know. And so I think that as one, starts really evaluating, where we are, you know, and saying, where am I in my life? How did I get there? And how do I then get to the place that I want it to be? How do I then lead the life that I really would like to be leading right now? And what personally is keeping me back? Not societal, not because of my race or my ethnicity or my class or culture, that is being beset upon by other outside forces. That notwithstanding, just where am I? What am I doing that is, preventing me or limiting or inhibiting me from being able to lead a life that I want to? I'll stop with, there was a book I remember, I believe it was published maybe in the 70s, and it was, what color is your rainbow? Yeah, or it was either what color is your rainbow or how bright is your rainbow. And so it was really, for me, you know, reading that book and being exposed to it, going, wow, okay, if, how bright is my rainbow? And ultimately, who's the artist? And that, as we're talking about trauma, we have to then start, owning, what role do I play in this? Am I a passenger? Am I the protagonist in my own drama? And a lot of times we find ourselves not in that position. And that ultimately leads to nihilism. And nihilism leads to apathy, when you don't have hope for the future. And, teenagers and adolescents, you can very well just ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's not cliche for them to say, I just want to be alive.
wow.
Right. And
That,
so, and in that response is an onus of me as a person who is older to say, wow, how did we get here? Right. And how do we how do we change this? How do
mm,
I change this? And I think just by starting off asking the question, I mean, if you are having issues about your own health and wellness, mental or physical, if you're concerned about, your own security, I would, suggest that you have a conversation with someone about these similar issues and help them or help to alleviate their pain and suffering around, health, wellness, and security. And then your own issues of health, wellness, and security will start to dissipate.
isn't that amazing how that happens? Thank you so much for that. Oh, that was just so packed full of richness. I really love the fact that you talked about therapy because I also am a product of therapy. I went to therapy for 8 consecutive years. There was a lot of damage that was done to me. I needed to help someone untangle my thoughts and untangle my feelings because they were all just,
Mhm.
mortified. Just um what's the word I'm looking for? They were just stuck together, like in a trauma, like in an automobile accident
Yep.
where you are just disfigured and mangled and all of that. That's how I was psychologically and emotionally. So I'm so happy to hear you talk about the therapist piece and getting a therapist that works for you, because there's so many of them out there. There's so many different techniques, and you just need to find the one that works for you. Can it be daunting to find that person? Yes, it can be. And how many times do you have to tell your story all over again from the beginning? That's okay, because then you are able to articulate it even better the more you talk about it, the more you tell it. So hang in there if you're looking for a therapist or you're in that therapist seeking journey. Hang in there until you find the one that works for you. And then you talked about not comparing yourself to other people. Wow, that was so just powerful. You guys, I want you to understand what Gordon just said. He said, do not compare yourself to anyone else. And that is so important because you are magnificent. You are unique. You were created, with a gift inside of you. There's more that makes you unique than just your fingerprints. You know what I'm saying? There's something that has been imprinted on your soul, something that has been imprinted upon you as an individual through the creator. So there's so much in you. All you have to do is just work with someone to bring that to the surface. And so comparing yourself to someone else is like comparing a rose to a bed of weeds. You are still a rose, even if you're in a bed of weeds. It's like comparing an apple in a an orange field, an orange orchard. There is no comparison, is what I'm trying to help you to see. There is no comparison outside of the fact that we all have flesh and we all have the same organs. Those are the things we have similarly. But on the inside, the part that actually motivates us, the engine, if you will, is totally different and specific for us in our journey through this process. And then you talked about the belief system of our families. You can come from the book that you wrote, that you read, and all the different phases that we can find ourselves in based on our age. I was listening for that. Am I there yet? Am I there yet? Did I go through that? Of course, through my 30s, I was just destroying my life, and my life didn't come alive again until I reached 40. And that's when I was able to understand the precious gift of life, understand, the need for a paradigm shift. And what I would even do, I would go so far as to listen to frequencies at night as I'm going to bed, listen to affirmations at night so that my subconscious mind can pick it up and help me during the day when my conscious mind is in charge. And that's how I was able to rejuvenate my thought processes and come to believe something differently, something that worked for me. Like you said, your father's truth was his truth. You had to find your own truth for your own life. And that's something that we all must do, right? In order to reconcile who we are with ourselves. Woo-wee, you guys, we are having an awesome time today. We are definitely having an awesome time. Thank you so much again, Gordon, for having you here with us on the healing train. And as we're going to continue to move on, we're going to be talking now about achieve. Once you're able to adopt a mindset that says, hey, you know what? I deserve to move forward. I deserve to be here. I'm grateful for who I am. And I no longer blame my situation on anyone else. I am not a victim. I am a survivor. And once you gravitate towards those types of thought processes and attitudes within yourself, then the whole world becomes open and available to you. You can achieve things that you were never able to achieve. You can see yourself in a different light to become the person you've always dreamed of being now that the trauma is no longer holding you back. Woo! How powerful is that? And so now we're going to ask Gordon to tell us all about the wonderful things that he's been able to achieve. And the successes look different for each of us. The struggle looks different, so the success also looks different. And so we want to hear about your successes, what you were able to achieve once you made peace with who Gordon is, once you made peace with the type of trauma that you had to endure, and the ways that you continue to keep yourself healthy today. What have you been able to achieve? Please tell us.
Well, sure. I want to preface it by saying two things, both on a spiritual level. My mother, was, in my words, Christ-like.
Mm.
She definitely could quote the Bible book and verse, and but she didn't carry it around as a vehicle to proselytize. She lived her truth and her belief that she was a child of God, and that everything that she did was in honor of that and showing that without having to utter a particular passage or phrase. And so people saw her, they saw what she perceived as being her godness, and others would be coming to her with that recognition or truth. And it was I was so privileged and so fortunate to be able to experience that. Certainly as a teenager and as a young adult, I didn't appreciate that then. And she told me that I would not, right? And she would say, "You're gonna miss me when I'm gone," and I say, "No, I'll miss you now. Why wait?" But that was me just being arrogant and cocky. But there, and I fortunately, I don't miss her because she's always present in
Oh
my
my,
life. So
yes.
I'm very fortunate in that regard. The second piece, which is, very important for me, is that this year marks my 40th year of practicing Buddhism. And the particular, philosophy that I practice is, it was created by a 13th century Japanese monk named Nichiren Daishonin. And the importance here is that, I maintain that there's no fate but what I make, and that I am, responsible, or I have the ability to create my own future, to recreate my destiny, and there's a lot that comes with that, because in being aware of that, then also comes the responsibility of being accountable. This is not being done or provided by anyone just because I was walking down the street and they saw me and I happened to have a smile on my face. None of that is not the way that this works. It is
Mhm.
really about locking myself in with the rhythm of the universe, and ultimately making the desire to be that change agent.
Mhm.
Uh, the successes, I mean, as I said, I've been extremely, extremely blessed, um, and on profound levels. Uh, most recently, I had a series of some health things that happened that actually had me in the hospital right before Christmas. And then, speaking to the various medical teams that were around me and other people that were around me, they then went on to tell me how serious, my particular situation was. I was not aware of the gravity of it. I knew that it was serious, but I didn't know that it was that serious. And so they went on to not only share that, it was that, almost dare I say grave. It's not being hyperbolic to say grave, but it could have been. Uh, but they were also very moved by how I was able to face that, and how I was able to continue to live my life, um, and take these all things in as if, the change of the weather, not being swayed one way or another, but continuing to move forward. So that for me is a big success.
Mhm.
The other, the accolades that that come, it they're always appreciated, but it's not. I'm not doing them. I'm not making the films that I'm making. I'm not doing the work that I've done, for the applause. Even when I was much younger and I had a very established acting career, I didn't hear the applause. I recognized, I knew it was there. I knew that it moved audiences, but it wasn't, for me, that wasn't what it was about. It was really, how do I affect an audience? How do I, make sure that my work, is really leaving an imprint? And, currently, as mentioned to you off camera, and maybe Lisa shared with it. So I have two documentaries that are in production. One that I started in 2010 called Blood Money, Patients for Sale. And it looks at the unjust enrichment by for-profit dialysis providers at the expense of the patient and the taxpayer. Patients are no longer seen as human beings, but billing opportunities.
Mm.
And so, how did we as a society get to that place? How do we change that paradigm? The importance of doing it. Um, and by a quick example, I think that, one of the shifts that can occur is our interactions with physicians, with nurses, and with staff. Being respectful of who they are and their work, right? Two, being equally respectful of who you are as an individual and making sure that it's clear that I am coming to you with respect and I demand nothing less, right? So we have that as a baseline. And then starting to have conversations with your physician where you're now partners in your own health and wellness, not being subject to arbitrary decisions that a physician may make about your health and wellness that is absolutely diametrically opposite than anything that you possibly need to hear, right? And so, so Blood Money is, uh, taking on the dialysis industry indirectly, arguably, directly, arguably, big pharma. So that, project I've been doing. The other project is looking at aging. It's called Aging Creatively, Changing Expectations. It's not the expectations of someone outside of, but it's the expectations that we have about how we will grow old, right? Because we are an aging society, even though as a society, we are age diverse. I mean, when growing up, whenever you thought of someone who was, old, 70s, right, well, 30s, right. Uh, but that image of someone who is old was usually Jack LaLanne or Helen Mirren, right? And that's not the reality, right? But the question, and we look at how, we as a country deal with aging, not just individuals, but think about our historical, our landmarks. Think about, how quickly we will knock down, buildings that have, played a part in whatever aspect, whether it's the civil rights movement, women's movement, whatever it is. We will destroy those buildings. We'll put up something else because, again, we don't fully appreciate, what it means. What does aging mean? And so then the question for me becomes, since we are an aging society, since, individuals over 60 outnumber individuals 20 and younger, and those margins are increasing. We are continuing to get older. We're not having as many children, for a myriad of different reasons. But the question for me has been, how do we improve the quality of life for our aging population? How do we improve the quality of life for our parents, for someone who is much older than us? Because if we're fortunate, we'll get to their age, and everything that we do to help facilitate improving their quality of life will benefit us. So in some ways, we're paying back and paying forward, right? Uh, and so those are the two films that I've been doing. They've gotten, not completed yet, but it has garnered, considerable attention, support, accolades, and the like. That's how I met Lisa. Actually, she is featured in the dialysis film, and so there are a number of things that I've managed to achieve in this life, but uh, I'm clear that what the accomplishments, the things that I was able to achieve, wasn't done by me alone. It was, at the benefit of so many people, those who are alive and those who've transitioned. I also, I say it in jest, but I also mean it in seriousness. I know that, you know, my better angels, my parents, my grandparents, and just so many other people who have transitioned. They're not up, if it's heaven, they're not up in heaven with harps and just chilling. I have them down here working. It's like I don't keep them bored. It's like, yo, guys, we got to get on this because stuff is real. So, again, I'm just very clear as to where I am, hopefully where I'm going, and with a profound appreciation and gratitude for how I've gotten here.
Oh my goodness, that was so wonderful. I'm so happy for you and your accomplishments. I really like the idea that you don't believe that your ancestors are dead and gone. I like the idea because that's what I believe about my mom. She comes to visit me, she speaks to me. I mean, I see her, and hear her, not in her physical form, obviously, but I see her in her spiritual form, maybe in the form of some other human being, maybe in the form of the deer that came to my backyard and was just gazing in on me. Hi, Mama. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's just the feeling that you get and they're present. And
Mhm.
so thank you for saying that because I can definitely relate. It almost makes me emotional just a little bit. But also, you talked about the documentary on blood money. That is a huge undertaking. And I tell you, I'm sending you all my positivity, all my energy, to complete that because, like you said, you're up against Big Pharma. You're up against the way we've always done things, where now people are not human anymore. Now we're just a bill. Now we're just an invoice number. Now we're just an account number, you know. And I'm really happy to hear you say that and bring some humanity back to that process. And then, loosely I heard, self advocate. You have to be able to self advocate. That's something that I believe in. That's something that I operate in. I have had people tell me I'm hostile. I've had people tell me I'm aggressive, and maybe it's because they don't know how to self-advocate. So those are labels that you put on me because of who you are, not because of who I am. And so I will not. And just like, you were saying, you went in and you trusted them and then you heard the gravity of the situation and you didn't know someone. I have to go tomorrow, as a matter of fact, and have some consultation, and someone asked me today, are you nervous? Are you worried? And I said, no, I'm not. I don't know any information, so there's nothing for me to be worried or nervous about. Ask me after I go talk to them. And then I'll have a choice. I'll have a choice on whether I want to be nervous or worried. But I know that I don't have to be nervous or worried because I know who I belong to. I know that I have a place in this universe, and I know that all things are working for my highest good. Even if I don't understand it, I have to just believe it, and then it is revealed to me on the other side after I walk through it. But just so happy to have you here and to just be bringing up all of these wonderful things. And then you talked about aging creatively. Woo! I tell you what, that aging creatively and gracefully, may I say, is not an easy thing to do, especially when you start noticing things about yourself that aren't the same anymore. It takes you a little longer to get up off the couch. Oh, that knee over there, and things like that. Not only that, but also looking at the way we age mentally. We know that Alzheimer's is still one of the number one killers, of our society. And so, always looking at ways that we can benefit ourselves through healing and through preventative type measures. You know, um, I'm just so grateful to hear you talk about that so that we could shine some light on those
Yeah, I
situations.
mean, if I can interject, I
Absolutely.
think that there's something that's really important and that's prevalent within the aging paradigm is loneliness and isolation.
Mm.
And it's been amazing to me because I've been dealing with these octogenarians, and they're hysterical. I mean, because old people, they talk with their feet, right? They don't. In other words, they're not going to tell you, they don't like you or they don't like this. They just don't show up, right? Uh, Now, sometimes we can misconstrue that as to, well, maybe they didn't like the class, maybe they didn't like me, or what have you. But then there's also fear. about, safety and security, which are real, right? Just leaving their house and going down to the mailbox, they could be beset upon, right?
Absolutely.
And then not only because of, the 3 years of COVID, as a reality, there
Yes.
there is again, that loneliness, that isolation, which has led to a lot of suicide, has led to a
Yeah.
lot of death. And so I think that it's really important that we start, making inroads to, the senior community or the older community, whom, someone who's older than you. Right. You may think, well, I don't know any, and there's someone who's older than you. And I think that, you know, that making inroads is so simple, of just saying hello, asking a question, starting a very brief conversation. You don't have to have lunch. You could just like kick it really on the bus, on the subway, going somewhere, just saying, how you doing? What's going on? The other thing that I think is very funny about, at least a lot of the older people that I've dealt with, there is again that time, that interval of time, right? So what I mean by that is that people 60 to 70 have a very different and specific mindset. 70 to 80, again, a very different and specific mindset. And what I've observed with people who are 80 and older, um, a lot of times, I mean, I used to call them curmudgeons too. I used to go, that's just a mean, nasty old person. They're just mad with life, whatever I might say about it. But it turns out, no, they're, especially the ones that I've been dealing with, they're just really busy and they don't have time for the nonsense. You keep it real or you keep it moving.
Mhm.
And these I mean, I interviewed this woman. When I interviewed her, she was 85. She was the second artistic director for an organization called Pearls of Wisdom, which is
Mhm.
an organization, primarily people of color, created by this beautiful sister, out of St. Louis, created this organization. And Pearls of Wisdom, they go and they do storytelling. Um, yeah, not, and nationally, right? A lot of the work that I am very familiar with is, New York and East Coast, but I do know that they go national, and I know that they've done some international travels as well. And to be able to be a Pearl of Wisdom, it's not like you just show up and say, hey, I'm a Pearl of Wisdom. They're like, no, you got to audition. You know what I mean? They don't play, right? Uh, but when I interviewed the second artistic director, she said to me that she would grant me the audition. I just had to promise her that she would be able to show me, 4 photos. And I'm going, okay, great. So now I'm going to have to look at some, crumpled up newspaper, and I'm going, oh, Jesus. Okay, sure, fine. Yes, you can do that. And then the interview happens and she's running late. She shows up, she walks with a cane and she has older and she's moving slow and all those things. And it happened to be her birthday. And then she tells me, okay, I said, good. So we're ready. The mic is on, the camera's ready to roll. She said, no, 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 no. You said I'd show you the photo. I'm like, yes, ma'am, you did. Please go ahead, show me. And she pulls it out, pulls out the first newspaper article, unfolds it. And I'm going, here we go. And there she is. And she says, this was 3 months ago. And she's in a pool with another 9 women, all African American. And she was the youngest. She was 84, right? The others were up to 89, and they're all doing synchronized swim. Now, I don't know if you've ever done synchronized swim, but
Yes.
synchronized swim ain't easy. It's water ballet, and it will. So, so I'm like, okay, well, that's lovely. She had a moment. She did some secret, and she said, wait, and here's the second photo, and there she is holding the first place trophy. So I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, that's cool. That's good. Good for you. Go on, girl. Rock on with your bad self, right? And then she says, and I'm like, going, okay, good. So we can go. She's like, 4 photos. I'm like, yes, ma'am. And she says, and this was a year ago, right? And I said, when you were 83. And she looks at me like, like I was right. Yeah. If the camera wasn't rolling, you'd get popped, right? So I'm like, well, you said a year ago, today's your birthday. What do you want? She goes, oh, look. So she pulls out the other photo, and there she is in a pool, and she's doing freestyle or a front crawl in a competitive race, right? And I'm like, okay, so girl had, some collegiate career. She might have, done a little something when she was in her 20s. Okay, that's cool. And it's just, and here's the other one, pulls out another photo. There she is holding the first place trophy. I'm like, damn, go on with your bad self. Okay, that's cool. And she says, and you want to know what I was doing 6 months before that? And I'm about to go, when you were, and she said, don't you right. You will, you're good. I said, okay, so a year and a half ago, what were you doing? And she said to me, I didn't know how to swim.
What?
Yes, she didn't know how to swim. She told herself that at 83, I'm going to learn how to swim. And I don't care that I have a cane and I walk with a hump or any of this. I'm going to learn how to swim.
Oh, bless her heart.
And so that for me, and I shared this with some individuals who had everything going for them, right? But yet they really saw their lives as not meaningful, in spite of everything they had, in spite of being able to breathe, right?
Mm.
And I said, okay, well, you may be right. Your life is just crap. Okay, that's true. And I'm not going to make you wrong. Okay. However,
However,
this sister, she decided at 83
83.
that she's going to learn how to swim.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That is truly phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that.
Glad
Oh,
thank you.
boy, we're having such a great time with you today. And so, as we're going to continue to move through the process, the next phase is the sustain phase. And so, for me, I like to congregate and fellowship with like minded, like hearted people. That helps me stay positive, keeps my vibration high, keeps away those bugaboos that can come sometimes when you're feeling isolated and alone. It's really important to fellowship. And so, how do you sustain? Do you have a special process or routine that you use on a daily basis, or how do you sustain all of that wonderful momentum and that sound mind and the ability to do the work that you do without it taking a tremendous toll on yourself, because you are truly the change agent, but you don't want to be changed in a negative way by the things that you're going through. So how is it that you sustain?
Well, I mean, I have two things. As I mentioned, I am a Buddhist, and so my Buddhist practice is central and core to me, uh, and it is definitely something that I do daily. And and I engage with people not just in that dynamic, or saying we're going to only talk about Buddhism or spirituality, but it's definitely an aspect that is very important to me. And then I have a very small, extremely small group of friends. Um, it's interesting that the English language doesn't fully appreciate or provide the nuances of friendship, or how to actually define. I mean, we want to call everybody our friend as opposed to saying, oh, they're just an acquaintance, it's somebody I know. We don't do that. We just say, oh yeah, my friend, but they're not really. And also, what type of friend am I? And so I'm very fortunate that I have this small circle, uh, and that hold me, to task, that call, and I mean, that's part of the requirement of the friendship, is to really be able to be held accountable and to hold others accountable, to really appreciate fully what does friendship mean? What does it look like? You know, how do I own it? How do I be the person that someone will say, that's my friend?
Mm.
I don't know much. I don't know much, but I know one thing. Gordon's my friend. And how do I know that? Because I'm his friend and he says so. And so that those things are really important to me, and they're able to not only sustain but hopefully help me, because I've been in this this mindset of, really shifting from surviving to thriving,
Ooh, wee.
right? Because that's what, at least for me,
Oh,
that's what I've been dealing with for a long time. And it's not, when I say thriving, it's not based upon economics or, or
hmm.
material things, but how is it, do I shift that mindset so I'm not just, worried about what is today going to be, how do I get to tomorrow? But really, how then do I shift it into, yeah, no, this is about thriving, and thriving where I'm able to help someone else achieve, where I'm able to achieve, in the collective. And so those are the things that, have sustained me and hopefully will continue.
Wow, that's so wonderful. It's so important to have some type of a practice because those traumas that we heal from, they haven't actually gone away. They're just kind of under the surface, lying there, lifeless. But if we breathe energy into them, they
Woo,
will come back alive and
woo.
they wreak havoc in our lives. And so that we keep them at bay, so that we can go from trauma to triumph, so that we can go from injury to invincible, so that we can travel from struggle to success. It's going to take more than just us. I like the fact that there is a universal source, energy that's available to us. You can call it whatever you want. It does not change what it can do for you and how it can sustain you. And then those like minded people, that you were talking about. It's so important to have at least two or three people that you can call friend, people that truly do understand you and want to be a part of your life and show you that they want to be a part of your life by investing in your life. And you can invest in someone's life in so many ways. And especially now, with technology, you can invest in someone's life in so many ways. And you can have friends that don't even live in your neighborhood that you didn't grow up with. As I think as we grow older and we understand the connections that we have with other people, those are the things that foster that friendship. It's not based on the fact that we go to the same church. It's not based on the fact that we have our daughters playing the same this or that and the other. It's based on who we are and the connections that we're able to make today. And it's just such a beautiful thing to know that you're not alone. It's a beautiful thing to know that you do belong, and that's what I want people to walk away with, to
And
knowing
that
that
they're valuable.
absolutely you are valuable, you belong, you're necessary, you're part of a legacy, and there's so much in you. And I just don't want people to think that there is no hope after trauma, or that they can't get through it, or that they're the only ones feeling it. And that's why I'm so grateful for this healing train platform. And we're going to have to wrap up, but we are so grateful and having such a good time talking to you. And so now, from a man of color, I want you to, no, not necessarily a man of color, but just as a man, okay? I want you to speak to the men watching this Healing Train episode. I want you to offer them some help or some hope from one man to another man, because I understand that men don't like sometimes going to therapy. They don't like the idea of looking inside. When you ask them how they feel, they tell you how they think. There are just different things that, a man can speak to another man. So take a few moments just now to speak to the men that are watching this process.
Okay. Let's see. I think that, it's important to understand that men, we bond shoulder to shoulder, and women bond face to face, right? Uh, but in our coming together, in our bonding, one that I hope that we no longer hold on to our traumas as a crutch, but as an opportunity, right? And that is a journey that doesn't matter if you're with a therapist or social worker or by yourself. That's, being with other people, you still got to do the work, And these are heavy lifts. And it takes tremendous courage. In a lot of ways, facing our inner darkness is more courageous than standing up in the middle of a firefight, right? It's more important because in doing the work, you are giving license to others to do the same. And I think that, the way that we do the work is one in identifying a friend, and a friend who sees your highest potential, wants something more for you than they want for themselves, right? And also recognizing that the male female dynamic doesn't exist solely on a carnal plane, on a sexual plane, right? uh, and so then how do I truly be a friend with another brother, with a sister, and it's not because it is a means of an extracted type of relationship, one that is predicated on what am I going to get from this?
Sure.
How am I going to benefit from this?
Mm.
Right. And when we can move out of that, and it takes work, but when we can move out of that, then what will happen is we'll start attracting individuals who are of the same mindset.
Yes.
Right.
Mm.
And so I go back to the importance of connecting with youth and with our elders. I mean, it is paramount that we connect with these two almost polar opposites, if you will, right? We have to connect with the youth. We have to meet them where they are, not where they're not.
Mm.
I start off my conversations when I'm dealing with youth by first apologizing. Saying, listen, I apologize for what you're about to receive. You don't get, I mean, if it was my choice, I don't think I'd want it, right? But I've also helped create it, right? So I have to own that. And I can't, mask it. I can't paint it. I mean, that's the other problem that we have oftentimes with young people is we try to frame it or strategically omit, not say the true essence of something, either saying, well, they're too young, they don't have the capacity to really understand. That's all nonsense,
Yeah.
right? And it does, and I mean, when you talk to a 6 or 7 year old and they're saying, well, this is what I'm thinking about, or someone who is 14 and 15 and they're going, I just want to be able to go from my house, to the candy store or to school and not worry about getting shot or shot at or arrested. And these are not semantics. These are not, I mean, it's not only they're not semantics, but it's not hyperbole for me to say this. I mean, this week we had 3 shootings that resulted in death in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. Just in Brooklyn, just this week, right? And they involved a 13-year-old, 16-year-old. I forgot the age of the other individual. Okay. How is it that we live in this environment where that is commonplace, where that's acceptable?
Mm.
How is that acceptable? Right? I mean, when I was growing up, Crips were what we called old people, right? Right. When I was growing up, there was, you go through a metal detector, right? There was, right. But this is that reality, right? So how do I own it and also speak to it, right? And the way I speak to it is by listening and hearing them, right? And then saying, okay, so then what do we do to change it? And I'm invested in your opinion so that we can actually create something that is tangible so that everyone can own it and can appreciate it, and we can change this. We're only going to change it for this block, okay? We're only going to change it for today, okay? But guess what? We changed it for today. We changed it on this block, which means that we can change it tomorrow, right? And then our seniors. Again, we only got here because of the benevolence of people that saw something in us, for whatever reason. It was a good day. They had on sunglasses, whatever. But for some reason, they then believed in you to whatever extent,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And in honoring that, how do we? And again, it's not heavy lifting. It's like you're on a bus, right? Or you're on a train, or you're going somewhere, and you just say to someone, "How you doing?
Yeah.
What's up with you, Granny? How you living? What's up, doll? You going dancing? What are you doing? You fooling, you playing, right? You breaking hearts and taking names with your beds."
Aw.
And then all of a sudden, you strike up a conversation. And I so believe in this because I had a number of years ago, I had a pretty bad bike accident. I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, I knew it was kind of messed up, but it was like, okay, whatever. And I would leave my house to go to the hospital for the post-operative, things that they would do until I wound up going to physical therapy. And every place I went, because I went out with the knowledge that everywhere I go is Buddha land. Everywhere I go, and so I'm going to change the dynamics in that hospital. I was determined. I'm going to change my interactions with the physicians, with the nurses, and with the staff. And my mother and my sister were nurses, and my niece is a nurse. So I mean, I get it, right? Um, but what I wasn't aware of and wasn't prepared for was when I said that I'm going to change it over there. Really, what was set up was I'm changing it everywhere I go.
Mhm.
And so I'm on a bus and I have this old Hasidic lady, I mean, Hasidic, who says to me, young man, what happened? And I said, well, I had to, oh, please, I had this happen. I fell. I bet you're going to be just fine. And then I had construction workers, yo, man, what happened? I'm like, yo, well, yeah, you look kind of messed up, G, but don't worry, man. I had this and it's going to be, and every day, everywhere. And it was saying to me that we have the capacity for compassion.
Yes.
And that was so, it was liberating, right?
Mm.
And so I think that because we're so used to being guarded, I have my 2 foot, and don't encroach upon my space, or what are you trying to do, or all of this. We lose sight of our own humanity,
Yes.
and the problem with that is, in losing sight of my humanity, I've already lost sight of your humanity.
Oh, wait.
And this is not woo woo stuff like, kumbaya, we are the world. Why can't we just get along? It's, how do I survive? How do I thrive? And start recognizing my humanity in relationship with others' humanity, even if they don't see it themselves.
Mm.
And that's the shift.
Wow. Woo, that was so powerful. That was so powerful. You guys, we have had an amazing time today on this episode with Mr. Gordon Skinner. I know you have enjoyed him like I have, and I know that there's something that he has said that has left you impressioned or impressed upon. And I'm just so grateful to have you here. And so, of course, we're going to have to wrap up now. I do hate to go. We'll have you back on again at another time. All right, guys, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm going to look forward to seeing you again next week, right here on the Healing Train. And in the meantime, if there's something that you're manifesting, something that you're believing in, I want to encourage you not to give up. Keep taking that step forward, keep that faith, because the thing that you're manifesting for is on its way to you. And if you'd like to have a trauma healing process in your life, please go to Amazon.com, and where you can find my book, The Energy Harvest, a spiritual model for the enhancement of your life. It's a workbook that allows you to process your trauma in the presence of your own home. And if you need me for accountability for any reason, you can call me at 317-828-3642, or you can reach me at b.vonsquires@gmail.com. All right, guys, with no further ado, we're going to say goodbye, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you. Bye bye.